The morning sun shone bright over London as tourists gathered around Buckingham Palace. The red-coated royal guards stood perfectly still at their posts, their faces showing no emotion despite the crowds pointing cameras at them. Among these tourists was Robert Thompson, a big-shot businessman from Chicago who always got what he wanted. Robert wasn't a patient man. Back home, people jumped when he spoke. His fancy car, designer clothes, and the way he looked down at others told you everything you needed to know about him. Today, he was touring London with his wife and teenage daughter, but he wasn't enjoying himself. The lines were too long, the weather too humid, and now this guard wouldn't even smile for a picture. "Daddy, can I get a photo with the guard?" his daughter Lily asked, pulling on his sleeve with excitement in her eyes. "Of course, sweetie," Robert replied, already walking toward the red barrier that kept tourists at a distance from the guard. The guardsman was younger than Robert expected, probably in his late 20s. His name tag read Wilson. Despite the heavy bearskin hat and thick red uniform that must have been unbearably hot, Guard Wilson stood perfectly straight, his eyes focused on something far away. "Hey buddy, my daughter wants a photo," Robert called out. The guard didn't move, not even a blink. Robert's smile faded. He wasn't used to being ignored. "Excuse me, hello, anyone home?" he called louder, waving his hand in front of the guard's face. People around them started to stare. Robert's wife touched his arm gently. "Honey, they're not allowed to react. It's their job," she whispered. But Robert had already decided this was a challenge. His face turned slightly red as he pulled out his phone and started recording. "Look at this guy, folks. Your tax dollars pay for him to stand here like a statue." Robert announced loudly to his phone, as if narrating for an audience. "Let's see if we can get him to crack." The crowd around them grew larger. Some people looked uncomfortable, others pulled out their own phones, sensing something was about to happen. "Guard! Hey, guard!" Robert called, his voice getting sharper. "Did they forget to program you this morning? Or are you just bad at your job?" Guard Wilson remained perfectly still, but a small muscle in his jaw tightened, the only sign that he heard every word. Robert's daughter pulled at his sleeve again. "Dad, please stop. This is embarrassing," she begged quietly, but cheeks burning red. But Robert was too far gone now. He stepped over the small rope barrier, putting himself just 2 feet away from the guard, much closer than allowed. "I bet you couldn't even handle a real job," he continued, his phone still recording every moment. "Standing here playing dress-up while real men do real work." The crowd's murmurs grew louder. An older man in the back called out, "Show some respect," but Robert ignored him. He circled around the guard, recording from different angles, narrating the whole time. "Look at this robot. Doesn't even defend himself, some soldier." What Robert didn't see was an older couple in the crowd. The man wore a veteran's cap, and his face darkened with each insult Robert threw. His wife was already on her phone, typing quickly. Guard Wilson stood unflinching through it all. His training had prepared him for tourists like Robert, but that didn't make the public humiliation easier. Behind his stoic expression, memories flashed, of battlefields far from here, of friends lost, of choices made. His father had taught him that true strength wasn't about fighting back, it was about standing your ground. A palace security officer finally approached. "Sir, please step back behind the barrier immediately." Robert scoffed but retreated. "Got enough for the video anyway," he muttered, already thinking about how many views this would get. As Robert walked away, pleased with himself, he had no idea that his phone had just captured the beginning of a story that would change his life forever. The footage was already uploading to his social media account, but not with the results he expected. Guard Wilson remained at his post, still as a statue, giving no indication of the storm about to break. Robert sat in his hotel room that evening, smiling as he watched the view count climb on his video. His wife Linda was quiet, still upset about what had happened. Their daughter Lily had barely spoken to him since they left the palace. 5,000 views already, Robert announced, glancing up from his phone. "People love this stuff." Linda shook her head. "I don't think this is going to end how you think." Robert waved her concern away. He was used to getting his way, to being admired. Back home in Chicago, he was somebody important. Who cared what a bunch of strangers on the internet thought? But by midnight, things had changed. The comments section under his video had turned nasty. People weren't laughing with him. They were angry at him. Who does this jerk think he is? Disrespecting a soldier like that? Disgusting. Someone find out who this guard Wilson is. And someone did. By morning, a completely different video was making the rounds. It showed Guard Wilson, whose first name turned out to be Thomas, in his army uniform, receiving a medal for bravery. The video included photos of Thomas carrying an injured fellow soldier through gunfire during his second tour overseas. Robert woke up to his phone buzzing nonstop. Notifications flooded in, none of them good. Someone had connected his video to his business profile. People were sharing his company information, his photo, his email. The hashtags #disrespectfultourist and #GuardWilsonHero were trending. "Dad, you need to see this," Lily said, her voice shaking as she handed him her tablet. A news article filled the screen. The headline read, "Decorated War Hero Harassed While on Royal Guard Duty." There was a photo of Thomas Wilson with his mother and younger brothers. The article explained how Thomas had joined the army at 18 to support his family after his father died. After 2 tough tours, he'd earned a spot in the prestigious Royal Guard. "Keep reading," Lily urged, her eyes filled with disappointment. The article included interviews with Thomas's former commanding officer, who called him one of the finest soldiers I've ever had the honor to serve with. There were quotes from Thomas's neighbors about how he still found time to help at the local veterans center despite his demanding guard schedule. Robert's stomach tightened. This wasn't some nameless guard in a funny hat. This was someone with a story, someone people respected. His phone rang. It was his business partner back in Chicago. "Have you seen what's happening?" his partner asked, not bothering with hello. "Our social media is being flooded. Clients are calling." "What were you thinking, Rob?" Before Robert could answer, Lily thrust her tablet at him again. They found more about Guard Wilson. Someone had tracked down cell phone footage from another tourist who had been standing behind Robert during the incident. This angle showed what Robert hadn't seen, Thomas Wilson's eyes. Though his face remained perfectly still, his eyes reflected dignity and restraint, not emptiness. The new footage captured something Robert's video hadn't: the humanity of the man he'd tried to humiliate. The story was spreading beyond social media now. A British morning show had picked it up. The hosts discussed the shocking display of disrespect, while showing clips from Robert's video with his face only lightly blurred. "We've got to do something," Linda said, watching her husband's face grow pale as he scrolled through the mounting backlash. Robert nodded slowly, the reality of what he'd done finally sinking in. He hadn't just made a joke at some anonymous guard's expense. He'd attacked a war hero doing his duty, and now the whole world was watching. Outside their hotel, a small group of reporters had already gathered. Someone had recognized Robert from the viral video and tipped off the press. His London vacation was about to become very uncomfortable, and this was just the beginning. The Thompson family's return flight to Chicago was tense and silent. Robert kept his sunglasses on even inside the plane, hoping to avoid being recognized. It didn't work. He caught people pointing and whispering. One man a few rows ahead kept turning around to stare. "It'll blow over," Robert told himself as they drove home from the airport. These internet things always do. But when they pulled into their driveway in the upscale neighborhood where they lived, Robert's confidence faltered. Someone had taped a printed picture of Guard Wilson in his military uniform to their mailbox. Across it, in red marker, was written, "This is what respect looks like." Linda quietly took it down before Lily could see it. The next morning, Robert headed to his office early, hoping to get ahead of the situation. His secretary Nancy's face told him everything he needed to know. "There's been quite a few calls," she said, handing him a stack of pink message slips. Robert flipped through them. 3 business partners wanted to discuss their relationship with his company. 2 clients had already canceled meetings. His biggest investor wanted to speak with him immediately. "And your email is?" Nancy hesitated. "Well, it's pretty bad." Robert's office phone rang. Against his better judgment, he answered. "Is this the man who harassed that guard?" A voice demanded. Robert hung up. His personal number wasn't public. Someone had leaked it. He opened his laptop to assess the damage. His company's social media accounts were disasters. thousands of comments, most negative. The customer service team had stopped responding, overwhelmed by the volume. Robert's phone buzzed with a text from Linda, "Don't look at the local news." Too late. He was already pulling up the website of Chicago's biggest newspaper. There it was, on the front page of the digital edition. Chicago business owner faces backlash after harassing war hero. They dug into his background, mentioning past complaints from employees about his aggressive management style. By lunchtime, Robert had cancelled all his meetings. He sat alone in his office, blinds drawn, watching as his reputation collapsed in real time. His daughter called. "Dad, they're talking about you at school," Lily said, her voice small. "My friends' parents are saying awful things about you in their family group chats." Robert's throat tightened. "I'm sorry, sweetheart." "Why did you do it, Dad?" He was just standing there. Robert had no good answer. "I don't know," was all he could say. After he hung up, Robert's assistant knocked softly. "Sir, there's something else you should see." She handed him a printout of a new article that had just been published. It revealed that Thomas Wilson's father had worked for one of Robert's companies years ago. He had been part of a large layoff when Robert decided to move operations overseas. According to the article, after losing his job, Thomas's father had struggled to find work, eventually taking 2 minimum-wage jobs to support his family. The stress had contributed to the heart attack that killed him 3 years later. That's why Thomas had joined the military, to support his mother and younger siblings after his father died. The room seemed to spin around Robert. He remembered that layoff minus 600 workers cut to boost the company's quarterly profits. He'd gotten a bonus that year. He had never thought about what happened to those people afterward. Robert's phone rang again. His biggest client was canceling their contract. His assistant handed him another message. The board of directors wanted an emergency meeting. In just 3 days, the empire Robert had spent 20 years building was crumbling, all because he couldn't resist the urge to mock a man who stood silent, doing his duty. A man whose life Robert had already damaged once before without even knowing it. Outside his office window, Robert spotted a news van pulling up to the building's entrance. Robert slipped out the back door of his office building, avoiding the news van up front. His phone wouldn't stop buzzing, but he ignored it. He needed time to think, to figure a way out of this mess. He drove aimlessly, eventually parking near the lake. The water was calm today, nothing like the storm raging in his life. He sat on a bench and finally checked his messages. The board meeting had been moved up. His top 3 executives had released a statement distancing themselves from Mr. Thompson's personal actions. His neighbor texted that someone had ate his house. The worst was from Linda, coming home late. "Taking Lily to stay with my sister for a few days. She needs space from all this." Robert put his head in his hands. How had everything fallen apart so quickly? His phone rang again. This time he answered. "Hello, Mr. Thompson." The voice was British formal. "My name is Peter Collins. I'm a journalist with the London Times." Robert almost hung up, but something in the man's tone stopped him. "I'm working on a feature about Guard Wilson." "Thomas Wilson," Peter continued. "I've spoken with his mother, Mrs. Wilson. She had some interesting things to say about you." Robert's stomach dropped. "I bet she did." "Actually, sir, she asked me to give you her number. She'd like to speak with you." Robert couldn't have been more surprised if the man had slapped him. "Why would she want to talk to me?" "Perhaps you should ask her yourself," Peter replied. 20 minutes later, Robert sat in his car, staring at his phone. He'd saved Mrs. Wilson's number, but couldn't bring himself to call. What could he possibly say to her? "Sorry I humiliated your son. Sorry my company fired your husband, which led to his death." Finally, he dialed. "Mrs. Wilson, this is Robert Thompson." "Mr. Thompson." Her voice was soft but strong. "Thank you for calling." I don't know what to say." "Then perhaps you could listen first," she said. "I know what you did to Thomas. I've seen the video. I also know about the layoffs at your company that affected my husband." Robert stayed silent, bracing himself. "My George was a proud man," she continued. "After he lost his job, he worked himself to exhaustion trying to provide for us. The heart attack took him far too soon." "I'm so sorry," Robert whispered. "Thomas joined the army to help us survive," she said. "He gave up his dreams of college to serve. He's faced things no young man should face. And through it all, he's remained the kind, honorable person his father raised him to be. Robert felt tears threatening. This woman had every reason to hate him. "Why did you want to talk to me?" he finally asked. "Because Thomas asked me to," she replied. "He doesn't want revenge, Mr. Thompson. That's not who he is." Robert couldn't understand. "But I've ruined his privacy, and years ago, my decision hurt your family." "Yes," she interrupted. "And now you have a choice to make. You can run from what you've done, or you can learn from it." The line went quiet for a moment before she spoke again. "Thomas finishes his guard rotation tomorrow. He's agreed to meet with you, if you want." Robert was stunned. "He'll meet with me. Why?" "That's a question only he can answer," Mrs. Wilson said. "But I will tell you this, my son believes that everyone deserves a chance to be better than their worst mistake." After they hung up, Robert sat in his car for a long time. His world was still crumbling around him. His family was hurting. His business was in trouble. The public saw him as a villain. And yet, the person who had most reason to hate him was offering something no one else had: a chance to face what he'd done. Robert started his car and headed home. Tomorrow, he would meet Thomas Wilson face to face. The thought terrified him. What do you say to someone whose life you've damaged twice? The small cafe near Hyde Park was quiet in the late afternoon. Robert sat at a corner table, his cup of tea growing cold. He'd arrived an hour early, too nervous to sit in his hotel room any longer. He'd flown back to London alone. Linda had refused to come, still angry about the whole situation. The bell above the door jingled. Robert looked up and immediately recognized Thomas Wilson. Without the bearskin hat and red uniform, he looked younger, but carried himself with the same straight-backed confidence. He wore simple jeans and a blue button-down shirt, looking nothing like the public figure he'd unwillingly become. Thomas spotted Robert and walked over. Robert stood up so quickly he almost knocked over his chair. "Mr. Thompson," Thomas said, extending his hand. Robert shook it, surprised by the firm but not aggressive grip. "Thank you for meeting me. I honestly didn't think you would." They sat down. A waitress came over and Thomas ordered tea. "I almost didn't come," Thomas admitted after she left. "My mates thought I was crazy to even consider it." Robert nodded. "I wouldn't have blamed you." For a moment, neither spoke. The weight of everything between them, the viral video, Thomas's father, the public outrage, sat heavy on the table. "I'm sorry," Robert finally said. "Those words feel so small compared to what I did, but I'm truly sorry." Thomas studied him carefully. "For which part? The video, or the layoffs that affected my father?" Robert swallowed hard. "Both. All of it. I never connected those dots until recently. I never thought about the real people affected by my business decisions." Thomas's tea arrived. He thanked the waitress with a warm smile that transformed his face. "You know what the hardest part of being a Royal Guard is?" Thomas asked, stirring his tea. "It's not standing still for hours or wearing that heavy uniform in summer heat. It's keeping your composure when people treat you like you're not human." Robert looked down, ashamed. "That day when you were filming me, trying to get a reaction, I wasn't just thinking about my training," Thomas continued. "I was thinking about my dad. How proud he'd be seeing me in that uniform. How far I'd come from the scared teenager who joined the army because we needed the money after he died." Robert felt a lump in his throat. "I didn't know." "That's the problem, isn't it?" Thomas said quietly. "We don't see each other as real people. You didn't see me as someone with a family, a history. Just like when you laid off hundreds of workers, you didn't see my father as a man with 3 kids and a mortgage." The truth of those words hit Robert like a physical blow. "Why did you agree to meet me?" Robert asked. "You could have just let me drown in all this backlash. Many people would say I deserve it." Thomas was quiet for a moment. "Last week, a reporter asked me how I felt about you. Everyone expected me to be angry, to condemn you. It would have been easy to do that. But you didn't," Robert said. "No," Thomas agreed, "because hate is the easy path. Forgiveness is harder. My father always said that the true test of a person isn't how they act when things are going well, it's what they do when they've made a terrible mistake." "I've made plenty of those," Robert admitted. "We all have," Thomas said. The question is, what are you going to do now? Robert had been asking himself that same question for days, sitting across from this young man, whose life he'd impacted so negatively, yet who still offered him dignity. He finally had an answer. "I want to make things right," Robert said, "not just with a public apology or donation, something real. Something that honors what your father went through, what all those families went through." Thomas nodded slowly. That would be a start. As they continued talking, neither noticed the person at the next table, quietly recording their conversation. The video of Robert and Thomas talking quietly in the cafe spread almost as quickly as the original one had. But this time, the comments were different. "Did I just see that right? The businessman is actually apologizing. Look at God Wilson's face. That's real forgiveness. This is what growth looks like." Robert watched the new video in his hotel room, surprised by the shift in tone. His phone buzzed with a text from Linda. "Just saw the cafe video. Call me." His heart pounding, Robert dialed home. "You actually went to meet him," Linda said when she answered. There was no anger in her voice now, just wonder. "I had to," Robert replied. "I needed to face what I'd done. Lily saw it too. She wants to talk to you." A moment later, his daughter's voice came through the phone. "Dad? That was really brave." Robert's eyes filled with tears. It was the first time she'd spoken to him without disappointment since London. "I'm trying to be better, sweetheart," he said. After the call, Robert sat down at the small desk in his hotel room and opened his laptop. For hours he worked, making calls back to Chicago, drafting emails, crunching numbers. By morning, he had a plan. 2 days later, Robert stood nervously in front of a small group of reporters. Thomas stood beside him, looking slightly uncomfortable in the spotlight but steady. "Thank you all for coming," Robert began. "A week ago, I did something shameful. I tried to humiliate this man for doing his duty," he gestured to Thomas. "What I didn't know was that our lives were already connected in ways I never imagined." Robert explained about the layoffs years ago, about Thomas's father. The reporters scribbled notes furiously. "I can't undo the past," Robert continued, "but I can try to build something better for the future. Today, I'm announcing my resignation as CEO of Thompson Industries." There was a murmur among the reporters. "Additionally, I'm establishing the George Wilson Foundation, named after Thomas's father. This foundation will have 2 missions, supporting veterans transitioning to civilian life and helping workers affected by layoffs and outsourcing." Robert turned to look at Thomas. "With the Wilson family's permission, I'm funding this foundation with $20 million from my personal accounts. And I'll be working there myself, not as the boss, but as someone with a lot to learn about real service." Thomas stepped forward. "My father believed that when you get knocked down, you have 2 choices: stay down or get back up and help others to their feet too. This foundation honors his belief that we're all connected, that we all matter." A reporter raised her hand. "Mr. Wilson, after everything Mr. Thompson did, how can you stand with him today?" Thomas thought for a moment. "Because holding on to anger hurts me more than it hurts him, and because I believe people can change when they truly see the impact of their actions." Another reporter called out to Robert, "Is this just damage control for your reputation?" Robert shook his head. "A week ago, maybe it would have been. But standing face to face with Thomas, learning about his father, it changed something in me. This isn't about saving my reputation, it's about finally becoming someone worthy of respect." After the press conference, as they walked away from the microphones, Thomas turned to Robert. "You surprised me today," he said quietly. "That was more than I expected." Robert nodded. "It's just the beginning. I have a lifetime of thinking only about myself to make up for." "The hardest part comes next," Thomas warned. "Living up to these promises day after day, when the cameras are gone and no one's watching." "I know," Robert said, "but for the first time in my life, I'm not thinking about what I'll gain. I'm thinking about what I can give back." As they parted ways, neither man knew that their unlikely connection would soon face its biggest test. 6 months passed. The George Wilson Foundation had found a home in a small brick building in London, not far from where Thomas had stood guard that fateful day. Inside, the walls were lined with photos, soldiers coming home, workers learning new skills, families rebuilding their lives. Robert stood in the main hall, straightening a picture frame. He'd moved to London 3 months ago after Linda and Lily decided to join him. His old life in Chicago felt like a distant memory now. The Minister of Defense just arrived, called Penny, the Foundation's receptionist. Robert nodded, tugging nervously at his tie. Today was the official opening ceremony, and important people from both the military and business worlds would be attending. But the most important guests were already there: Thomas and his family. Mrs. Wilson was chatting with Linda near the refreshment table. Thomas's younger brothers were helping set up chairs, and Thomas himself was standing by the doorway, greeting guests in his formal military uniform. Nervous? Thomas asked, walking over to Robert. Terrified, Robert admitted with a small laugh. What if they all still hate me? Thomas shook his head. This isn't about you anymore. Look around. See what's already happening here. Robert followed Thomas's gaze. In one corner, a veteran was showing a former factory worker how to use new computer software. Near the window, a group of teenagers, children of laid-off workers, were being tutored by volunteers. The foundation had already helped dozens of families, with hundreds more on the waiting list. You were right, Robert said. The hard part wasn't the big announcement or writing the check. It was showing up every day, doing the actual work. The room gradually filled with people. Robert's former business partners looked uncomfortable but curious. Military officials in decorated uniforms spoke with community organizers. Two worlds that rarely mixed were coming together. Mrs. Wilson stepped forward to the small podium. The room quieted. My husband George believed in hard work and helping others, she began. When we lost him, I thought his story was over. But sometimes stories continue in ways we never expect. She gestured to Thomas and Robert, asking them to join her. As they stood on either side of her, she continued. 6 months ago, these two men were strangers brought together by an unfortunate moment. Today, they're partners in something that has already changed lives. She turned to Robert. Including yours, I think. Robert nodded, too moved to speak. Thomas stepped forward. My father lost his job because of choices made by people who never saw his face. I nearly lost my dignity because someone didn't see me as human. But today isn't about what was lost. He looked at Robert. It's about what we found, our common ground, our shared humanity. The foundation isn't just helping people get jobs or services. It's reminding us all that behind every decision, every uniform, every position, there are real people with real lives. When it was Robert's turn to speak, he kept it simple. I spent 20 years climbing to the top by pushing others down, he said. I mistook wealth for worth. I confused power with purpose. It took losing everything to find something better. He looked out at the crowd. His daughter Lily was smiling proudly. Linda was wiping away a tear. The man I was would have thrown money at this problem to make it go away, Robert continued. But Thomas and his family taught me that real change happens person by person, day by day, through actions, not just words or donations. As they cut the ribbon to officially open the center, cameras flashed. The story of the businessman and the Guardsman had come full circle, from viral humiliation to something neither could have imagined. Later, as guests mingled, a young man approached Robert. My dad worked at your Chicago factory before the layoffs, he said. He struggled for years afterward. Robert braced himself. I hated you for a long time, the young man continued. But seeing this place, what you're doing now, he extended his hand. Maybe people really can change. As they shook hands, Robert realized that redemption wasn't a single moment, but a lifetime of choices, and he was just getting started.